Caitlin Clark recently signed a contract that put a stop to careers she had never even touched.
But even before she makes her pro debut, she has a major Nike deal on the line.
The same veterans who spent 2 years attempting to destroy her are the ones whose names are currently being crossed off contracts by NBC executives in boardrooms. They believed themselves to be untouchable. They were mistaken. Caitlin isn't the one seeking retribution. The folks who write the checks are the ones who have determined that the old guard is worthless. Caitlin is sitting courtside at NBA games, shaking hands with legends as veterans wrangle over money at home, turning into the face they wish they could hide. The majority of fans missed the power transition since it happened so quickly. However, neither the numbers nor the vacant seats where 10-year pros once sat are deceitful. This is no longer about basketball. Survival is at issue here. Additionally, the players that attempted to gatekeep are now barred from entering their own league. Stay put. We're dissecting how karma evolved as a business tactic. No one coveted the golden goose. Something odd happened in April 2024 when Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA draft. The league received just what it required, but it was unsure of how to respond. She brought two. Her debut game with the Indiana Fever drew 4 million viewers. However, those figures only provide half the picture. For many years, the Indiana Fever were among the worst clubs in the league. In an arena with 17,000 seats, their typical home crowd was about 4,000. Since no one wanted to go, ticket costs were extremely low. After Caitlin was drafted, everything changed in an instant. In just 1 week, purchases of season tickets increased by 300%. Tickets for the Wings and the last games of the upcoming WNBA season are selling out quickly. Because their regular arenas were unable to accommodate the demand, road teams began shifting Fever games to larger locations. This is when things get crazy. Those figures were also seen by the veterans. They observed arenas that were sold out. Products were flying off the shelves. Because Caitlin was in their level, they noticed an increase in their own Instagram followers. However, they said, "Stop," rather than, "Thank you." Before the season even began, Diana Taurasi stated on a podcast that rookies must know where they fit in. She discussed how the collegiate game is different, how Caitlin would struggle against professional defenders, and how success isn't always correlated with fame. It seemed like a warning, even if it sounded like counsel. Other veterans stepped in as well. In order to give Caitlin more influence, they began conducting interviews in which they hardly mentioned her name at all. When the game began, Trinity Carter gave Caitlin such a severe shoulder check that it made national headlines. Even casual basketball fans who don't watch the game watched the clip since the hit was so clear and deliberate. It was celebrated by Angel Reese. On the sidelines, she applauded like if Carter had just won a championship. It was an obvious message. This youngster has no place here. The cheap shots continued. Referees hardly ever called flagrant fouls. Hard screens that took place far from the ball. Players were disparaging each other in ways that went beyond the boundaries of competitiveness. Posts on social media are disparaging. Veterans grumbled about Caitlin's excessive attention in podcast interviews. For covering Caitlin more than black players who had been in the league for years, several players even claimed that the media was racist. Fans took note. They began by posing a straightforward query. Why are these athletes upset that someone noticed them? Do of the harsh maths. Before Caitlin, the average number of people watching WNBA games on a good night was about 400,000. According to recent TV viewership figures, the season started on May 14th. Games during the regular season occasionally drew fewer than 200,000 spectators. On weekday afternoons, some games hardly reached 100,000. Teams were competing in arenas that were just partially filled. Due to the league's inability to pay for charter planes, players were traveling commercially. Those same arenas were now full. Weeks in advance, games were sold out. The cost of tickets tripled. All of the league's records were broken by merchandise sales. Rather than viewing WNBA games as filler, TV networks were really fighting over broadcast rights. Additionally, the veterans were grumbling about it. They contrasted their use of social media. They examined sales of jerseys. Each and every metric indicated the same thing. The WNBA had never seen the amount of money and attention that Caitlin Clark was bringing. However, the players who ought to have expressed gratitude were attempting to harm her. All of this was being observed by NBC. The Peacock was observing. There was no doubt that the team owners were observing. They were also taking notes. They saw which players welcomed the attention and which ones resisted it. They observed who was harmful and who was beneficial to business. Soon, those notes would be important. In February 2025, a commercial decision was made that completely altered the situation. NBC announces a huge media rights agreement with the NBA and WNBA. The value of this trade was billions. The largest contract in league history was the WNBA portion alone. Everyone anticipated that NBC would begin highlighting the league's legends, champions, and veterans who laid the groundwork. NBA coverage, not WNBA coverage. During pre-game shows, she appeared on screen alongside Carmelo Anthony and Vince Carter. She is evaluating Steph Curry and LeBron James. In the meanwhile, NBC's promotional materials do not feature Breanna Stewart or Diana Taurasi. Consider how crazy that choice was. NBC has purchased WNBA rights for billions of dollars. Any player may have been promoted. The history of the league may have served as the basis for an entire program. The Olympic gold medalists, the four-time champions, might have been included. Ripples won bronze at the 2024 Paris Olympics. The players who continued to play in the league despite its annual financial losses. Rather, they gave a rookie with exactly one season of experience the largest platform. The veterans were incensed. Some players felt deceived, according to those close to the Players Association. For many years, they had been devoted to the WNBA. During seasons when arenas were empty, they performed. When no one was interested, they advertised the league. NBA players had private jets, yet they flew commercial aircraft. NBC was suddenly behaving as though that past didn't matter. However, loyalty was not a concern for NBC management. Money was on their minds. Furthermore, the data presented an unavoidable narrative. Peacock began launching its WNBA advertising campaigns. I'm the biggest fan, but I'm also the WNBA's top seller. Every banner included Caitlin, and I want people to know who we are. Caitlin was featured in every advertisement. In the promotional material for their own league, the other players were reduced to background noise. It wasn't an accident. They used casual sports fans to test various promotional materials. For the veterans, the outcomes were terrible. Additionally, there was hardly any response when posters of Diana Taurasi or Breanna Stewart were displayed. Engagement skyrocketed after they displayed Caitlin Clark. The casual admirers were aware of her identity. They recalled her games from college. They were curious to see what she would do next. Even social media advertisements were tested by NBC. Posts about Caitlin received 5 times as much interaction as those about any other WNBA player. Every metric, likes, shares, comments, and saves, favored Caitlin. The marketing department completely stopped evaluating other players because the data was so biased. The executives examined the information. The number of watchers increased as Caitlin performed. It fell when she didn't. She sold more jerseys than all the other WNBA players put together. More Caitlin Clark Indiana Fever shirts were sold in a single day, according to a post made by basketball journalist Dick Weiss. The Indiana Fever sold out every home game after having the lowest attendance in the league. When clubs announced Caitlin would be playing, attendance at road games doubled, but the stats became even more bizarre. During games, NBC monitored viewership minute by minute. They discovered that fans would change the channel or stop watching the game while Caitlin was on the bench. They were observing Caitlin Clark's basketball game. The league's established power structure was severely impacted by this. The WNBA has always operated under the premise that the team as a whole was more important than individual players. Revenue was split between teams. Budgets for marketing were allocated across the league. It was intended for each player to participate in the same movement. However, NBC's data demonstrated the model's demise. The same thing was shown by Peacock's streaming stats. The average number of streams for games with Caitlin was 500,000. The average number of games without her was 80,000. Yes, that is a significant change. That's how profit and loss differ. That's what separates you from losing your job. NBC made a decision. They believed they were powerful because of their heritage and victories. However, power in professional sports is not derived from the past. It originates from what you are able to sell right now. And when the money stopped coming in, NBC was only interested in marketing one thing. The WNBA Players Association and team owners are currently embroiled in a labor dispute. A 30% income share is what the union demands. They desire greater pay. Better travel conditions are what they desire. These demands are not absurd. Players in other professional leagues receive far more. Here's the issue, though. The veterans in charge of this battle don't have the power they believe they possess. The owners are examining the figures. For 25 years in a row, the WNBA lost money. The NBA continued to provide funding for the league, which is the only reason it survived. Each and every season between 1997 and 2017 of 2023 ended up losing money. Teams were losing money. The typical WNBA team was losing millions of dollars annually. The NBA's treatment of the league as a charity endeavor was the only reason it continued to exist. When Caitlin arrived, the WNBA had a genuine opportunity to turn a profit. In a single season, sponsorships rose by 40%. Revenue from merchandise broke previous records. All TV ratings increased. The Indiana Fever alone went from losing $2 million a year to perhaps breaking even or earning a profit for the first time in team history. Was a member of the Indiana Fever following a stellar collegiate career. The owners are aware of the source of the funds. The veterans were not the source of it. It originated with the rookie they attempted to ruin. This is where the labor disagreement becomes intriguing. The Players Association is calling for money guarantees. Regardless of earnings, they want the owners to commit to increased baseline pay. For each team, they want charter flights. Better hotel accommodations are what they desire. They want to be treated like NBA players when it comes to marketing dollars. As they listen to these demands and sit through these conversations, the owners are mentally calculating. Perhaps $50,000 in ticket sales and merchandise are generated for her squad by a 10-year veteran earning $200,000. Millions are made by Caitlin Clark. There is a problem with the maths. Why would owners give players who don't generate income extra money? Therefore, the owners are not in a panic when the Players Association threatens to go on strike. They have a fallback strategy. If necessary, they can operate a season using substitute players. Caitlin Clark is under contract with them. Paige Buchers is going to be drafted. They have a whole new crop of talented college athletes who aspire to play professionally. There used to be no threat of substitute players. Without the stars of the league, who would watch a WNBA season? However, that was before to Caitlin. The owners now understand that people will keep an eye on her as long as they have her. Fans will attend as long as Caitlin is on the floor, and they could load lineups with Division II college athletes. Another long three, Clark. She has returned. The veterans believed they had the upper hand. They believed that the league need them, but they are no longer needed. Caitlin is necessary. And whether or not the WNBA season occurs, she already works for NBC. The power dynamic is entirely altered by this. Because there would be no product to offer without them, players have influence in the majority of labor disputes. However, the collective league is no longer the WNBA product. It's just one individual. Furthermore, that individual is not involved in the union struggle. She is compensated by NBC to sit courtside during Lakers games. Whether or not the WNBA season takes place. Veterans are beginning to grasp this. According to reports, some players have advised union leaders to reconsider threatening a strike. They recognize that they are bargaining from a position of weakness rather than strength. They are realizing that the owners will always prefer the young talent if they are forced to choose between paying them more and creating a league centered around youthful skill. The veterans began to understand what they had done at this point. To keep Caitlin out, they constructed a wall. Rather, they constructed a prison for themselves. They gave the owners the ideal justification to rebuild without them. They are now stuck in a negotiation that they are unable to win. Corporate America chooses a side. Nike was faced with a choice. A number of WNBA veterans are sponsored by them. Additionally, they have a huge endorsement contract with Caitlin Clark. The 60th Super Bowl was approaching. 2 spectacular turnaround seasons will culminate in Super Bowl 60. Nike has enough money to run a commercial during the match. Who do they feature? Was the question. They did not select anyone. Nike announced during Ad Week that they will not be airing a Super Bowl commercial this year. No advertisement for Caitlin Clark. There are no features for veteran players. Nothing. Before you knew what was going on behind the scenes, this seemed strange. Nike has no desire to be involved in a conflict. The veterans and their followers would criticize them on social media if they included Caitlin. They would be promoting athletes with less marketability and public reputation if they highlighted the veterans. Thus, they fully withdrew. The issue was not present for other brands. Wilson, Gatorade, and State Farm all upped their attacks on Caitlin. Pre-orders for her trademark shoe line with Nike are already surpassing previous records, and the line is scheduled to launch soon. Veteran athletes are experiencing a decline in endorsement contracts. The business world is brutal. They don't give a damn about sentiment or legacy. Return on investment is important to them. Millions of people interact with Caitlin's Instagram postings. Veterans receive thousands when they post. For brands, that distinction is important. During the WNBA season, Peacock subscriptions increased by 35%. The increase was directly linked by NBC officials to Caitlin Clark's games being accessible on the site. That is actual cash. You can't dispute that data. Respect was what the veterans desired. Instead, corporate America gave them the finger. Nobody anticipated the fallout. March of 2025. Social media is exploding. The labor conflict may prevent the WNBA season from taking place. Supporters are taking sides. Here's what actually goes on behind the scenes, though. Private meetings are being held by team owners. They are discussing a situation that no one wants to discuss aloud. What if they made a fresh start? What if they brought in young talent and retained Caitlin? All night long. Caitlin Clark. Are you referring to my time in high school? Clark. This is the young one. And allow the veterans to leave. When you consider the economics, it seems extreme. A 10-year veteran who earns $200,000 a season might make $50,000 from merchandise and ticket sales. Millions are earned by Caitlin Clark. The maths isn't even close. Caitlin was given a platform entirely apart from the WNBA by NBC, which has already made its decision known. She currently appears on NBA broadcasts. Outside of the league that attempted to undermine her, she is developing her brand. If there is a cancellation of the WNBA season, I believe that people adore the current NBA because there was a lot of talk about it earlier in the season last year, but as I mentioned, by the time we reached the playoffs, very few people were discussing it. Even still, Caitlin prevails. She continues to appear on television. She continues to receive compensation. She is still relevant today. That safety net is not available to veterans. They vanish if the season is canceled. Without games, there would be no exposure. Endorsements are impossible without exposure. In the absence of endorsements, the player's pay is the only source of income. Additionally, there is no backup plan in case the owners decide to move on without them. Veterans are beginning to understand this. There are quiet discussions taking place. A few athletes are defecting from the union. They are considering what transpired and speculating that they might have erred. It might be too late to make amends, but perhaps they should have welcomed Caitlin rather than opposing her. This has implications for basketball. There is more to this narrative than just one person or one league. The current events in the WNBA will alter the nature of professional sports. We're witnessing a league totally reconstruct its identity around a single individual for the first time. There are superstars in the NBA, but it doesn't rely on one individual. Now, the WNBA does. Caitlin Clark is the center of attention. Her games become the focal point of the schedule. She is the main focus of the marketing. She is given priority in the television contracts. This makes things risky. What happens if she is hurt? What happens if she chooses to retire early? Caitlin Clark does not yet have a floor. That left foot, man. That appears to be really unpleasant. What happens if she wishes to perform abroad? One player has received all of the league's funding, and the entire thing might fall apart if that player vanishes. However, the owners had no other option. The alternative was returning to 200,000 spectators and deserted arenas. They prioritized survival over security. A harsh lesson about professional sports is being taught to the veterans. The number of titles you have won is irrelevant. How long you've been in the league is irrelevant. What you bring to the table at this moment is all that matters. Furthermore, they don't currently offer what Caitlin does. Future WNBA players will behave differently as a result of this. Young athletes joining the league are observing what transpired. They are realizing that while talent is important, marketability is more important. They are realizing that being skilled in basketball is no longer enough. You must have both business acumen and basketball skills. The game is evolving. The veterans made an effort to halt it. They were unsuccessful. Caitlin Clark was merely a college player with a lethal three-point shooting 2 years ago. Veterans are losing their jobs today because of her. This decision was not made by NBC due to their cruelty. They succeeded because the masses compelled them to do so. The decision is clear when one player is worth more than a generation of veterans put together. The veterans had their opportunity. They had the option to raise Caitlin and ascend alongside her. Rather, they attempted to destroy her and bury themselves. She now sits courtside at NBA games while they sit at home. They won't be saved by the owners. The networks are not reconsidering. The company has moved on. This is the result of opposing your own achievement. The veterans no longer own the league. The girl from Iowa owns it, and they were unable to break it. She's only getting started.